Welcome back to the Alts Podcast. I'm your host, Horacio Ruiz. We bring you industry leaders and creators to give their insights on the rapidly changing and exciting world of alternative assets. Opinions expressed on this podcast by the host and podcast guests are for informational purposes only and should not be considered investment advice. Podcast hosts and guests may maintain positions in the offerings discussed in this podcast. Thank you for joining the podcast. Today's episode features Litan Yahav, the founder and CEO of Vyzer, a startup that helps investors organize their assets and give them some insights on their alternative investments. Litan sold a previous startup, and with extra cash reserves on hand, he found himself struggling to keep up with his investments. Out of his desire to construct his own portfolio and to manage his cash flow, he created Vyzer. He had a hunch that other individuals like him faced the same problem. In this episode, we talk about alternative assets, how Vyzer helps investors organize their portfolio, and the unique way that Vyzer uses community to provide insights to its users. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Litan. All right, guys. So thank you for joining me on the podcast today. We have a great guest today. We got CEO Litan Yahav from Vyzer. Welcome on the podcast.
Thanks, man. Really great to be here. I love what you guys are doing.
Really appreciate it, Litan. We're talking a little bit before we got on, just a little bit. But I kind of want to know a little bit more about you, about how you got to start Vyzer and what Vyzer is all about. But I think the most important thing is you described yourself as sort of like this alternative space founder, and I want to know if you could kind of talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So first, let's start from the end. So I'm 40 years old and married. I have 3 kids. I was born in the States. But moved to Israel when I was 9. So that's like I'd say a different in like the startup scenery, I guess, especially in the US. I was in the Navy for 6 years. No tech background, no cybersecurity background or anything like that. Never developed a piece of code or learned to develop anything. But after 6 years of serving, so I went to school and studied law and business. Not the sort of direct approach to building a startup. But in my last year of studies, I was part of this amazing program called the Sam Zell Entrepreneurship Program. So it's funded by Sam Zell in the US, but he has like 3 or 4 of these programs around the world that he funds. And it's supposed to sort of kickstart entrepreneurship and leadership in these various sort of different industries around the world. So I was lucky to be part of that program back in 2011. And founded a startup back then, what was like in a very weird industry that we just stumbled upon, looking for an idea to build, a problem to solve in the diamond industry. And so like we saw this very old fashioned industry, the way things are traded, mainly B2B, but between diamond dealers, just like shipping diamonds around the world, flying with them in suitcases, just like didn't make any sense at all. We said, why don't we bring tech here and help people trade diamonds without physically shipping them, just based on like really high resolution 3D images of these diamonds? And, we didn't have a background in tech or in diamonds, but we said, how hard could it be? It was hard, but we were really lucky and we managed to create an amazing product that then created a standard for diamond imagery. So like we became the standard for photographing and displaying diamonds online and sold the company back in 2015. To a big e-commerce website in the US, stayed on for a few more years, but then sort of ended up managing our own money, investing a lot of real estate, private equity, some other alternative stuff like startups and crypto, and then found our own issues managing money and decided to build a whole new startup out of that. So like that's what Vyzer is all about. So it's just like very, I think it's a unique story in the sense where like we don't have this like amazing technological background that we wanted to implement something that we know to solve a very specific or to look for a problem to solve, but rather looking for problems that were worth solving that we thought we can solve because we were naive enough. And anyway, so that's like my quick background about what brought us to what we're building today.
Yeah, you write about that in your website. You talk about like how you're able to sell your first company, and you described it as life-changing money, right? It's not something that sets you for life, is what you wrote necessarily, but it was life-changing. Take me through that. Like how difficult or complicated was it to, once you come upon a certain amount of money, managing it and trying to keep track of it and really kind of figuring out what to do with it?
Right. Let me start from the end and just say like these are good problems to have. All right. I can't complain, but sort of when we sold the company, we made money. We didn't make tens of millions of dollars, but we made enough. And at that point, there was a bunch of like PR around it, and we got approached by me and my co-founders by some like, financial advisors, wealth managers, private bankers, multifamily offices, stuff like that, saying, "Hey, I mean, we can help you manage this amount of money you just got. Come to us, and we'll do this and this and this." And we just started to meet with these people. Even at one point, we sort of transferred our money to this private bank here in Israel. And like three months later, they kicked us out of the bank because we just took all of the money from there and just invested it elsewhere. Because, like these private banks, most of the time, they're incentivized sort of to convince you to use their own products. Like they'll have these mutual funds or these like investment vehicles that they want you to invest with. And then because obviously they profit off of that as well. They're not all bad. I mean, it's like this one-stop shop for people who do not want to deal at all with their money. That's cool. But for us, it's like, wait, I mean, we made some money. We want to grow it. Let's find ways to do that. And we found ways out of these institutions and just ended up allocating it on our own. And the cool thing in Israel is that every second person here does real estate abroad. We live in a unique financial system, whereas the equivalent to the US 401k or IRA or like the retirement savings is mandatory in Israel. So you don't have a choice. And so everyone here sort of has that feeling that they're set for retirement. And then every excess cash they have is they look for alternative ways to invest it. And so that's what we did. So we know a guy who knows a guy, and we just started to sort of meet with people and put some money here and some money there. And like with potentially really nice returns, and some with cash flow and some sort of like appreciation in the US, in Europe, some in Israel. Like after a year or two, it's like, wait, I don't even remember where I put my money. Like I said, these are good problems to have, but like, all right, so we built these crazy spreadsheets, me and my co-founder. Because we come from tech, and because we always look at inefficiencies and how we can solve them with tech, it's like, wait, holy shit. Like we have these crazy ass spreadsheets that we built that break all the time. We get these documents from all these investment products that we're investment in every quarter, every month. We have bank account transactions in multiple bank accounts. It's like, wait, why don't we just build something for ourselves to sort of automate that whole process? The process of that document gathering, of analyzing documents, of like tracking transactions and all that. And we just built ourselves a piece of product for that. And a bunch of friends wanted it as well. And we're like, wait, there might be a whole business here. So that's sort of like the quick background of that.
Vyzer, yeah. Just real quick, I mean, because there's a common theme. I know I interviewed on the last podcast a founder as well. He grew up he was like a stock trader for years in Chicago, and he had he came upon a bunch of money, but he resisted that idea, like you, to have other people manage his money. He wanted to manage his own money, and I'm kind of wondering if you could talk about that. Like, I don't know if it's like a generational thing, because he's sort of like in the same age range. He's about in his mid 40s. What it is about wanting to have I don't want to say the control, but having the flexibility to manage your own money. Which is, I think, is maybe a little bit different than what the older generations have done in the past.
So I think it's sort of, when you look at the markets, I don't know if it's a matter of someone else managing my money, because, when I invest in these other, real estate funds and syndications, and I mean, someone else is managing my money in those specific funds. Right. But when someone is managing the strategy and not the tactical aspects of them. So for example, if someone is holistically managing my money, but they're not the one that's managing the tactics of like, all right, this is sort of like the public market stuff, and this is the real estate market stuff, but they're just looking at the overall. Like, I don't need them to do that for me. I need really good people to do the tactical aspects of it, but not the overall. Now, I'm going to add on or like open whatever small anecdote about the specifics of public markets. For me, I don't believe. I mean, what do you mean? I don't believe. I'm not like unique in believing this, right? Most people will never beat the market. You're safer just put money in an index fund for long term as opposed to stock picking. So most people that obviously sort of like retail investors like myself, but also even traders, like professional traders, the vast majority of them will never beat the market. And so like why? And I don't want to, I mean, I'm fine with making 9-10% annualized return over the next 30 years on an index fund. So I don't need someone to do that for me, right? And so if it's the public markets, just put money there, maybe in a certain structure, which has tax advantages. Again, that's a different person that you talk with, right? A tax advisor. And then sort of maybe even leverage that or whatever, but sort of I don't need someone to manage my money in the stock markets. I do need people that know real estate and I can trust that they're not going to screw me over, or that they know private equity or really good operators. So that's sort of my approach to it, at least.
Yeah. That's a good point. And I think the second thing also that I want to touch on what you said, I thought it was really interesting how it was, in Israel, it's mandatory, right? Like you're saving, you're putting away money, that's kind of mandatory. That almost gives people, citizens the creativity then to find those alternative investments. It's almost like it's ripe. It's they're creating that,
Yeah, we always joke about it that like you have $50,000 like of available cash, you'll go and you'll buy an apartment in Berlin that you've never seen before because you know a guy who invests in Berlin. So it's really common. The funny thing is like, because it's such a common aspect to invest abroad in Israel, like, so many people that do it, it's really easy to find those operators, those syndicators, those people that do that type of stuff. There are also some good ones and not as good ones, as politically correct. Sure. But like when I started to talk with sort of people in the US specifically, they don't know anyone in their circles that does what we do. And so like, it's really sort of, you have to go and you have to find those points of reference or knowledge bases or like you guys are doing with alts. It's like, I need to go and actively look for ways to deploy money into these private markets, because most of my social circles will have no clue what I'm doing, or even more than that, will think I'm stupid doing it. And so that was like mind blowing for us, because, and we're like, wait, what? There's no chance that only Israelis invest in the US, right? There have to be Americans that invest in the US as well, right? That's why we decided to build Vyzer, because the assumption is there are a lot of people like us, like millions of people like us in the US, and that need help like we do.
Let's talk about, the product that you built. You had mentioned it before. You built this, database essentially, right? That could track your money. Your friends got interested in it, and they wanted to know, more about it. They wanted to get included. How does Vyzer work? And what stage is the company in right now? And if someone's interested, are we talking about individuals, high net worth individuals? Are we talking about, funds, companies? Who can use Vyzer at the moment?
Yeah, it's a bunch of great questions. All right, so let's start from the beginning. So we founded Vyzer after researching the hell out of the world for like 6 months back in 2020. COVID broke out, and we just started to sort of think, all right, what's out there? What can we do? We built this for ourselves and then said, wait, there are a bunch of friends that want it. But all right, it's dangerous. Well, just because my friends like it as well, that means there's a potential business case here. And we just like took a mode, me and my co-founder, to speak with just hundreds of people like us around the world, specifically in the US. And just like on Facebook and on these forums online, and just friends of friends of friends, and speaking with operators that do real estate in the US and private equity in the US, and just like getting on a phone call and Zoom call with these people. And this was good timing because everyone was on Zoom calls at that point. So it was easier to get sort of on these calls. And then sort of we found that specifically all over the world, but specifically in the US, there are millions of people like us. And what I mean like us, it's very hard to put sort of a net worth metric on it. There obviously is, because if you're not an accredited investor, chances are you won't have these complexities because you won't usually be aware of these types of investment vehicles and products. But even if you're an accredited investor, the US, the threshold to be an accredited investor is very low. So just to put things in context, not sure if everyone knows, but if you make $200,000 a year income, or $300,000 as a household, or you have $1 million liquid, then you're considered an accredited investor in the US. And what that means is that you have access to financial products that people who are not accredited investors don't have. So for example, you can invest in venture capital or in startups above a certain threshold. You can invest in real estate syndications, which are basically groups that pull in money from outside investors to buy a piece of property together and then get part of the profit. So anyway, what defines the people we spoke with, that the vast majority of them are accredited investors and have investment positions in these more complex products. So that's what defines our segment, right? People that have more complex portfolios. If I have to put it in an investable asset or net worth bracket, it's probably people between 1 million to 15, 20 million net worth or investable assets. And we are looking to serve consumers directly. So people like us. Mm-hmm. And what we do for people like us is we serve, and not everyone knows exactly what this means. So we have to dive into it for a second, or you can push me in any direction you think we should go. But we're trying to build a type of virtual family office. So if I had a family office, and a family office in the US, usually if you have 50 million, 100 million and up, you're going to have a team that helps you manage your money and also helps you find good deals and deploy money into investment products. Like those are the two main functions that a family office has. Yeah. But if you're not that big, you still have money, but you're not big enough, you're not going to have a family office because it won't make financial sense. And so you don't have that place where you can throw in all your financial documents. You'll get an email from an investment that you have, and you forward it to Vyzer, your family office. You link in your bank accounts to Vyzer, and then Vyzer will automatically monitor your bank accounts, your transactions, and link specific transactions to specific assets to update the performance of those assets automatically, like a family office would do for me. If I had that, like it was an ultra high net worth individual, they'd go into all my bank accounts and look for stuff and match stuff and set things up for me and do all the heavy lifting that I would have to do. So that's sort of like how we started, where we're at, and sort of what the main core business of what Vyzer is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that you touch on that. I have a broad understanding of what a family office is, right? But I don't entirely know like the details of what a family office does, right? And so it's interesting that you would describe Vyzer as sort of a virtual family office, in that it's, analyzing, how your stocks maybe are performing or how your savings are doing, and all that. And I guess I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on that, like that's kind of what a family office is there for, right? Is they don't just manage it. I mean, they're actively managing it, correct?
Well, it depends. It's sort of ambiguous. Like there are different levels of family offices, but at the highest level, there's like the highest, like not the highest level, like the best family office, but the high level approach is that it doesn't even have to actively have discretion on all my investments, just like monitoring everything for me, and helping me decide where to deploy it to the best products, help me do due diligence on new investment products. And again, the stock markets, like my stocks and bonds, are the least interest for people like us. Usually it's more the alternative stuff. That's because any website today, any budgeting app, they're like 1,500 budgeting apps in the US. You can link in your Fidelity, your Robinhood, your TD Ameritrade, all of them, and you're going to get an amazing breakdown of your stocks, bonds, like everything. It'll monitor stuff for you. But once you start to segue into private markets, real estate syndications, private equity, funds, startups, crypto, it's like you're left on your own because these products are not built to monitor, track, project, that type of stuff, right? And so we're more focused on that part of the market that has those types of investments where a family office would come and help them. I mean, these people might even pay a bookkeeper or someone to manage it, help manage it for them, right? Not the professional side of it, just like the admin side of it. And because we're focused on these private markets, we're sort of not just giving that overview of what you have, what you had in the past and what you'll have in the future, and analyzing your documents and updating assets based on documents and all that type of stuff. We're also planning to show you what people like you are investing in. So based on this pool of information that people can opt in or out of, we can then show you where people are investing in the private markets, which funds are the best funds, which are the worst funds, where like share like information between users within the platform around these private markets, because it's really hard to find out good investments in the private markets. It's all word of mouth.
So like these private markets, and I imagine that there are, thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands worldwide, let's say. How compatible are they with Vyzer? And that's kind of one of my questions I had with another company we spoke about earlier was, what are the markets then that they can just upload onto Vyzer? I mean, how many different accounts can Vyzer take on, or can they recognize? If you could talk a little bit about that.
Right. So first of all, Vyzer can manage endless accounts. It depends how they're integrated into the platform. And I'm assuming that's what you're focused on, right? So, yeah. So I'll give you an example just to put things into context of what sort of an average line item within someone's portfolio would be in these private markets. All right. So for example, I'll find a guy that I trust. All right. Let's say you decide to build a real estate syndication. And you go and you find me and a bunch of like 10, 15, 20 other guys or women and say, all right, I found this cool multifamily complex in Phoenix, Arizona, and I need to raise $2 million from investors in order to buy this. I'm going to manage it. I'm going to do everything, but I need your capital in order to go and purchase this property and then get financing from the bank. Fair enough?
Yeah.
So you're going to come to people like me, the 15, 20 people of investors, and say, all right, the minimum ticket is $50,000, and who wants to come in? That you're going to get every year, you're going to get cash flow from this that I'm going to distribute, usually around 8% on whatever you invest. And after 5-6 years, after you renovate the whole complex, you're going to exit it, and we're all going to get a share of the profits. Mm. But you're going to do all the work, and we're just going to sit down and do nothing and give you the money. You're going to get a bigger cut of the profits than we are, and that's fine. All right. That's like a common type of deal that people like me invest in. And so imagine I do one of those. It's really easy to remember. All right, I invested with you. I put 50,000 in. I get an email from you every quarter saying, this is the distribution. I remember it because it's only one. If I have 15 of these with different people that do these types of deals, I'm going to get an email. I'm not going to even remember how much I invested, when I invested, what are the terms, what am I supposed to get? Even if I do remember what the terms were, 2 weeks later, I'm going to get a distribution to my bank account and I have to revisit. All right, wait, what is this? What's this money that I just got? I don't remember. And so that cycle is sort of the initial pain point we're trying to solve, in addition to everything else in the finances. Now, there are ways to sort of pull in that data automatically, because if you raised funds from people like me, you're going to have a platform, a website that I'll have to log into and see my position with you. And like you, there are going to be 15 others that have different websites, and I need to log into each of them. And so Vyzer has a few options. Either build integrations to each of those websites so that I just put in my username, password, and then pull all the data in. We're working on that. We don't have that set up yet. Mm-hmm. Or I'll just get an email from you and forward it to Vyzer, or put Vyzer on a CC to that email so that every time you send me an update, Vyzer also gets an update. And I'll link in my bank accounts to Vyzer. And then every time you send out a distribution, Vyzer will monitor that and automatically link it to my account. So I have to do almost nothing ongoing to maintain my portfolio, even in the private market. So, and that's even without integrating with platforms like yours. Now that might sound a little complex. I hope that was clear enough, but that's where like the initial aspect of sort of hacking those integrations that we don't have yet. And we have integrations like 16, 17,000 bank accounts, financial institutions, and all that type of stuff. But that's not in the private markets as much as it is in the public ones. And we're starting to build integrations also to those platforms.
So basically, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong here again, I'm just ironing it out because I find it really, interesting, like how can you get, there's so much information out there, right? And there's so many different spaces that people invest in, that I'm kind of wondering, and also how broad is the alternative asset space? We're talking about, like you mentioned, real estate, but you could be talking also about art, right? Or certain collectibles, high price collectibles. And so I guess my question is saying, and you answered it before, and I just kind of want to confirm it, is someone can send Vyzer an email and then their account will be updated for them in that sense.
Either an asset created or a current asset they have on the platform is updated. Yeah, 100%.
Gotcha.
And you're right. There are endless types of investment products out there. But the cool thing is there are only two real metrics that matter. There's the value of your position, your account, your investment, and cash flow to or from it. That's all that really matters to me as a retail investor. If I was a family office or a CPA, probably other aspects would matter. But for me, wanting to understand my position, cash flow, that's all I care about, right? So even if I have a baseball card, all I care about, all right, what's the current value of that baseball card? If I invest in a fund and there's a commitment for me to invest in that fund over the next 2 years, $50,000 every quarter, I need to remember that happens, and I want to project it on my cash flow so that I'm ready for it when it comes out. So there are different aspects of anyone's investment life, but there are only really two that really matter, which is NAV, which is net asset value of each investment, and cash flow to or from it.
And kind of touching upon that, I found that interesting, and I'm just kind of looking at it. You said that you mentioned before, Vyzer can send insights to the users. It can also kind of give you an idea of what other people are maybe investing in. And so you've kind of marketed Vyzer, as having this information that's crowdsourced and also AI driven data. And you've touched on it, I think, by talking about that. But I'm wondering if you could go a little deeper into that. Like, how is that crowdsource used? How is that AI data used for the benefit of the consumer?
Right. So the AI or the automations that we do are around a lot of aspects of the product and the service that we give. So, for example, analyzing the documents that people submit to us, it's a combination of automation and machine learning and AI together with humans who actually go over the documents and input it like a white glove service for people. And so there's a combination of that. The second aspect is sort of because when you link in your bank accounts and we automatically analyze all the transactions that appear in those bank accounts, there's an algorithm that sort of learns on its own to improve in its suggestions to match transactions to specific investments or liabilities, right? So that you'll get a distribution or there's an expense and we'll raise a flag saying, hey, this is relevant to that asset or relevant to that liability. So that's sort of like the initial aspects of the automations and let's call it sort of the artificial intelligence of it. The second aspect, which is the benchmarking, is because sort of we only give value service to the investors themselves. And because we do that, we have the ability to also show them without any conflict of interest which investment products people are investing in. So, for example, in the US alone, there are 50,000 funds, general partners, private equity firms that invest in real estate and stuff like that. 50,000 in the US. These are funds that have like 10 investors up to 1,000 investors in plus, right? And so imagine if customers are in Vyzer and they're invested in a bunch of these investments, these funds, and then there are thousands of users within Vyzer, there's overlap around those funds. And then we show people who opt into it, obviously, it's totally anonymous and 100% secure. But like if they opt into sharing their information anonymously with others within the platform, they'll see anonymous data of like in real estate, for example, which funds are people investing in and how many people within Vyzer have invested in each of those funds and in which specific investments through those funds have they invested, and then enable people to communicate between each other based on those investments to create very high level of transparency, which is totally non-existent in the private markets today. And what that is creating, which is really cool, we did not plan on this, is that we have these funds reach out to us because they hear that we're Vyzers where we're going to list this stuff, basically ranking them. And they want all their investors now to use Vyzer so that when we launch this benchmarking aspect of it, they're already going to have a track record that was not pushed by them, but by their investors. And it just creates a whole new level of community and transparency of data that is totally non-existent in the private markets.
Yeah. And I imagine that the Vyzer platform gets better data and stronger data as more people join the platform, right? And as there's more overlap.
100%. Yeah. And yeah, there's so many things so much value we can bring to customers using Vyzer. That's just like the tip of the iceberg, right? Imagine, because the alternative markets, the private markets, are totally illiquid, right? And so you can't sell your positions. But what if you see all your information? Vyzer has all the backlog of that data, sort of the underwriting of it, and we can create a whole market within Vyzer without any conflict of interest, but people can then liquidate their positions within Vyzer to other people within Vyzer. Yeah. And there's just so many other aspects we can do. And again, we want to stay true always to the consumers and never sell their data, never try to sell them more stuff. Just take and business model is just a flat membership fee. So that's sort of like where we're going with this.
Awesome. Litan, I have two more questions for you. The last one's kind of general, but we did speak about it. And this is something that I want to bring up because of our audience. We had spoken about another kind of similar company, AltExchange, which we had as guests on our podcast, and it's one of the more popular podcasts as well. And we talked a little bit about it. I'm kind of wondering if you could tell me how you compare to that. If there's any difference there between the two products, and then kind of where you are at right now between the two.
Right. Yeah. Well, first of all, like I know the founder, Zach. He's a great guy. And they've built a really, really good product. They've sort of pivoted towards B2B, more offering services to advisors, if I remember correctly. One of the things that sort of we do differently is that we offer that service aspect of like a virtual family office type service where you just throw any document, any email, and we analyze it for you. And then we also really focus on cash flow and tracking transactions and linking them. But not just that, also projections of like, all right, imagine you have all these investments, and all these investments have assumptions from a cash flow standpoint, meaning cash that's supposed to come in and cash that's supposed to go out. And we sort of pull all that into one place on a graph and project your cash flow for the next years moving forward so you can make decisions. Because one of the things that a lot of our audience has is they might be wealthy, but many times they're cash poor because they forget they have commitments. Right? They're going to get a phone call from a fund saying, hey, all right, what about the $200,000 you have to transfer? Time's up, transferred over. And they're like, wait, holy shit, where did I get this money from? I don't even have it on hand. And because they forgot. And so we were sort of that place where we have everything in one place, have that one source of truth. And the benchmarking side of it as well, we do not have any arrangements with any of the funds. And again, I don't want to do any injustice here, but if I remember correctly, in order to integrate with some of the platforms, they had to go and make agreements with these funds so that they can pull in data. And so then once you do that, you're obliged to sort of hear out these funds because they just gave you service. Whereas I never have a conflict of interest with these funds because I don't owe them anything. All I care about is for the investors' interests, showing them who are the good funds, who are the bad ones, regardless of any type of partnerships with them.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks. We have a lot of times overlap in the industry, and it's just good to hear what different companies do differently from others. What's next? What's on the horizon for Vyzer in terms of developing the site, developing your team? What do you see kind of in the next 6 months to a year? Especially given, I guess, if it has had an impact at all on, the fears of an official recession. I don't think anyone has officially declared a recession yet, but I think that the majority of the world is open to the idea that it's already here.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to really uncharted waters, and it is, as any startup in our industry and any financial service company or overall generally, we're going to really uncertain times, and it is a little scary where we're going to. And I think sort of so if I look at Vyzer on its own, so we're in a really good situation. We have enough money to get through this. We have an amazing team, and we're building out our product to sort of answer the needs in the market. We're charging, like I said, we're charging for this product, for the service, which is helping us build it out even more and giving high levels of service. And just like from the roadmap perspective, what you asked. So the benchmarking is something we want to roll out by the end of this quarter. Next quarter, we want to start dealing with taxes, insurance, more like projections and financial planning aspects of the product. We also want to be able to build access management to the platform, because I want to be able to give my CPA access to Vyzer, other family members access to Vyzer, maybe share with my friends and get their input on my portfolio. There's a lot of things we want to do with it so that we give more value to the investors themselves. But sort of like the next year is going to be a very interesting year. And also for our customers, like you look at the investment product field, and even real estate, private equity over the last few years is going to totally change over the next few years because of interest rates, in my mind. And people at the moment are sitting on a lot of cash and looking for opportunities. And so scary times, but when they always say, if you go into a recession with a mindset of not of fear, but into like a mindset of opportunity, I think many people are going to get extremely rich from sort of identifying opportunities and investing in right places over this next year or two.
Yeah, and I think that's something that across the board, through all parts of the alternative space is kind of what people are saying, is if you can identify opportunities now, you can really set yourself up really well, for the next wave, right?
Right.
Litan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Great learning about Vyzer. Seems like you have a really cool product that can help a lot of people, just kind of manage, the wealth that they have. Not a bad problem to have, but something that definitely is a need. So thank you so much for coming on, and want to leave it open to you if there's anything else.
I mean, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for having me, and I love what you guys are doing at Alex & Co. And so keep it up, and we'll be in touch.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Vyzer's innovation of providing insightful feedback to its users from crowdsourced data is a distinct feature. It's also a testament to the company that, as Litan states, private equity funds are reaching out to Vyzer so that they can be included in the AI's recommendations. A big thanks to Litan for coming on the podcast and sharing his journey as an entrepreneur and the latest developments occurring at Vyzer. And as always, a big thanks to you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review or follow us on the streaming platform of your choice. Until the next time, take care.